This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Welcome, everybody, to episode 83 of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. This is a very special podcast. This is all AEW. You guys asked for it. We're going to give you the AEW special. It's going to be a round table. We do have some clerical work to take care of really, really quickly. And by we, I mean my cousin, the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
The Lebanese Nightmare in the building. Ready to record, talking about AEW. I can't wait to get this going because it's the biggest thing in wrestling. You know, even when WWE shows are going on, people are chanting AEW. When WWE makes big mistakes, people are all talking about they can't wait for this to go off this Saturday, and I'm glad we're going to talk about it.
The thing is, AEW has to save us. That's what everybody's preaching. That's what everybody wants. This past weekend, though, we had Money in the Bank, and the calling the card, we're not going to go through and give you a Money in the Bank review because, like I said, this is all AEW, but this is the clerical work that we've got to tackle real quick. Last week, both me and the Doc predicted 4 matches correctly. Thus, we ended in a tie. All that being said, we're going to split the point. I lead 10.5 to 9. I have a 1.5 point lead over the Doc. All that being said, we're done with WWE. We're done. Shelve it, table it. We'll get back into it next week. We're going to talk AEW. And we're looking forward to having a talk with Big Drew from the Big Drew and Jim show. You can hear it on ESPN 961. You can also hear it on 1130 WDFN. Also, Big Drew is a huge wrestling fan. You can listen to him on the Court of Nerds podcast. We're going to dial him up, and we're going to have this nice little round table discussion all about AEW. On the phone is the one, the only. He is the mayor of Grand Rapids. He is Big Drew. He is on the Court of Nerds podcast, which you can follow on Twitter and Facebook at court_of_nerds, as well as 101.3 The Brew in Grand Rapids and on the iHeartRadio app from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then after all of that, he does the Big Drew and Jim show, which I'm a part of. And you can hear that on ESPN 961 in Grand Rapids, as well as 1130 WDFN in Detroit every day from 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. Also, you can follow my man on Twitter at Big Drew Khan. Big Drew, what's up, buddy? AEW.
What's going on, brother? How you doing?
Not too bad. This is going to be exciting. So AEW is probably the hottest thing in wrestling right now. I think the only thing hotter is probably my girlfriend Becky Lynch. She's cheating on me, by the way, with Seth Rollins. We don't need to talk about that. But anyways, AEW. Now, in our group chats and in on Twitter, people are basically begging AEW to save us from WWE and some of their booking mistakes. How do you guys feel that this organization can be successful and compete with WWE?
Right. Oh, there's a ton of things you can do. The first thing that you need to do if your intention is to, compete with Vincent K. McMahon is understand something that Vince has apparently forgotten, and that's that wins and losses matter. 50-50 booking does nothing for anyone. No one knows who's better. No one knows who's supposed to be better. Listen, this is America, not British League soccer. Wins and losses have to mean something.
How important and how much should this first show be emphasized in terms of the kickoff point for AEW? Because I think there's really a lot of maybe pressure that's going to be put on this show because, they announced it in January. There's been this large buildup. I mean, I think AEW has a lot to live up to, especially now with a lot of fans when they do take in WWE. They're kind of looking at AEW as this like next level type thing, and they're really looking at AEW as a replacement. So I think there's a lot of pressure to deliver on the show with what a lot of people are expecting.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, I think if you're AEW, you have to look at Double or Nothing, and I've always been a little surprised that they didn't just call it All In 2, but you have to look at Double or Nothing as All In 2. You have to prove that All In wasn't a fluke. You have to prove to the world that you can throw an incredible wrestling show without Marty Scurll, without Okada, without Rey Mysterio. You're missing some of your marquee names that made All In such a big hit, but you are retaining the core of what made it work, and that is Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, and Kenny Omega. Now, Hangman Page is a guy, after having seen him live, I like even more than I did before, but losing the Pac match, I think, is massive for AEW. Pac is a guy who AEW is supposed to be the type of company who gives them a shot, and if you're already having creative differences, I know a lot of people are putting it on Pac because, you couldn't work with Vince and now you can't work with the Young Bucks. But at the same time, if you guys read up on it, and I know you did, this was planned to go from his feud with Hangman Page into a feud with Kenny Omega. And I'm going to be blunt. If the whole thing was Pac didn't want to lose to Kenny Omega and Kenny Omega didn't want to lose, can I remind Kenny Omega that his best matches in his career were matches that he lost?
See, and I think that's a great point. I think that's an awesome jumping off point to kind of really delve into some of the issues that AEW might have. You've got a lot of guys who have control. They have the VP title, and they're the foundation of what this wrestling organization is being built upon. Is that going to rear its ugly head? Are we going to have issues with creative booking like we had with WCW, where Hulk Hogan wouldn't drop his title or Hulk Hogan wouldn't put younger guys over? Are we going to have an issue like this? John, do you think we're going to have a tipping point where one of the foundational talents won't put over a younger up-and-comer, or in this case, a guy like Pac can't beat Kenny Omega?
See, at the same time, I don't blame Pac because he's actually showing respect to a belt and a title that he has. And so he's saying, and there's also rumors that, there's visa issues and things like that. And you got to also remember that right now, sometimes when these wrestlers go independent, they want to exert some control. And one thing that Pac has is a title from another promotion. He doesn't want to devalue that, especially when that promotion has given him an opportunity to shine his skills and things like that. So I can understand it. Who I blame is AEW for not maybe foreshadowing this and potentially not including this. I mean, you had basically the visual of Pac on stage. This was a match that was hyped up, which ended up being now, instead of being there on Saturday, it's there on Tuesday on YouTube. But to your point, I don't think it's going to be like WCW where there's too many VPs or things like that. I think that what's going to happen early on is there has to be a level of cohesiveness and a respect level for the guys up top. I do think that you do have to highlight at first Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega. Now, not all at once, but, obviously they're going to be prominently featured on the shows and things like that. But similar, I do believe that by adding Jim Ross, there's going to be this emphasis also at creating new stars. And that's the secret. That's what WWE has failed to do now in the latter part of 2 years, is create the next megastars. And that happens when, yes, the likes of a Cody Rhodes, the likes of the Young Bucks, they put over these guys. I don't think that, remember, They have now a couple years to try and get this right. They're going to ride this early momentum. I think fans are going to be patient with them for at least maybe 6 months to the first year, because they're going to get on television. They're going to put on quality shows. These matches are going to be talked about. They're going to draw oohs and ahs. So I think concerns about too many leaders, I think early on, is maybe a little overstated. I think the big concern is probably going to be, what's WWE's reaction going to be? Because remember that WWE is the biggest company in the world. So if these guys' deals come up, if there are situations where WWE is getting mad, they may just go and start raiding the talent and making it really tough to really build a promotion. Because remember, one of the challenges now that's going to have to take place in the fall is putting on compelling television week in and week out so that people will continue to support AEW. Because you're not going to get unconditional support forever. I do think, though, that AEW has to find a way to put on compelling television week in and week out and have these great shows. But I don't think early on that the management is going to ruin AEW.
Drew, too many Chiefs and not enough Indians, or nothing to worry about here?
I actually loved a lot of that answer. I thought a lot of that was great. But here would be my big counterpoint to it. I actually agree. I don't think that the management structure or maybe even the booking is going to be that big of an issue early on. But here's my question for you, because and I loved your point about I don't think they're going to have a problem with putting over young guys. Where are the young guys on this Double or Nothing card? they're all buried in the casino battle royale. I mean, having seen MJF, the guy works like a horse and is so talented, and you're burying him in the battle royale. Sean Spears, a.k.a. FKA, whatever K.A., Ty Dillinger, not only are you burying him in your casino battle royale, he's the 10th entrant, which was his gimmick in WWE. So I guess that's where I'm confused, is I agree completely. They have to build compelling television. But your audience knows who the Young Bucks are. Your audience knows, hell, we know who the Lucha Bros are. But do they know these guys that you're putting in the Battle Royale, or would they have been better served with some more featured time on the main card, even if it is in a Fatal 4-Way, the way they did the great women's match at All In?
See, I think that's a great point. And I think that's the one thing that New Japan does so well. New Japan has a ton of talent, and they've got to get all those guys over some way, somehow. They've got to get them either TV time, or they've got to get them time on whatever the pay-per-view is. So what they'll do, and a lot of people don't realize it, is they end up having these 8-man tag matches, or they have these 10-man tag matches where everybody gets their spots and everybody gets their work in, so that way they can kind of shine individually in a group match. And with a Battle Royal, you don't really get that. There's too much going on. It's too much chaos. You don't have one-on-one going on in the ring, and then you've got whatever you got going on the outside of the ring. And I think, Drew, more to your point, that is kind of a misstep. That's a missed booking opportunity that AEW has right here. So I think that's a great point. They've got a lot of young talent, but how do you utilize that talent with the megastars that you have? You know, it's going to be a balancing act, especially for guys like the Young Bucks, for guys like Kenny Omega, and for Cody Rhodes. And I'm not sure if they get that done. You know, do egos get in the way? That's the one thing that really hurt WCW, was egos got in the way, and it really crushed that organization. I just don't want to see that happen here, and I don't know if it will, but I think there's a possibility that it might. Does anybody have any concern with the Khan family owning the company? This is the same family that owns the Jacksonville Jaguars for the last 6 years, and the Jacksonville Jaguars have gone 32-80. It's not a good record for boys and girls at home keeping score. They also own Fulham FC in the English Premier League. After one season, they were relegated, and it took 2 years to get them out of relegation. When the Khan family takes over, things don't initially go up. It seems like things kind of take a step back, and then they get their footing, and then they get going. With AEW, I feel like you've got to come out of the gate, and you've got to blow the doors off, because there's so much hype, and there's been so much build-up to all of this. I'm not sure having the Khan family, I know they've got a ton of money, I'm not sure that they are the right family for this venture.
Well, I'll start with this. In terms of the Khan family, I don't think you need them other than their funds, okay? Because here's the deal. The reason why they've established all these guys as VPs is they know the industry. You got to remember, I think having the Khan family and knowing that, okay, that the initial investment I think was $100 million, so that kind of puts everybody at ease, and then you realize, okay, they have connections, potentially relationships with TV people, and that's how you get a deal right away within 4 months of starting a company. You're going to be on TV this fall. And then you realize that sometimes when you do have a bunch of leaders, those guys can do some things. Remember, let's not understate that Cody Rhodes comes from wrestling royalty. He's been in the big promotions. He's seen the mistakes. He's obviously heard from his brother what some of the major pitfalls were in WCW. I mean, they're well documented. It's easy to find out how to make huge wrestling mistakes. And I do think right away, the thing that they're doing that's special is they're coming out and saying, we are going to be different than WWE. We're not trying to compete. We're not trying to take over a company that's already established and is making $900 million in profits every year. We want to do something that provides a wrestling audience that's starving for something, and we're going to provide that. And I think if they stick to that narrative, if they give the wrestling fans what they want, great wrestling matches, great angles, don't interrupt matches with commercials. Don't have stupid-looking belts. To tell the fans exactly, stop the 50-50 booking.
That was all just this week in WWE.
Yeah, exactly. If they go about their business and they stick to the early mantra, I mean, you bring in Jim Ross. You have a bunch of guys with experience overseas from Japan, here in the States, guys already potentially that could come over from the bigger promotions. I think with the mantra that they've established, that this promotion has a fighting chance. Tony Khan, if he starts to act like Mark Cuban or starts to act like a guy that wants to get all in the promos, get all up in the business, if you start seeing, the marker for me is if you see Tony Khan in the ring at the pay-per-view, you'll know there's a problem. You know that he's got potentially a Mr. McMahon persona, a Mr. Tony Khan persona that's coming that might be a problem.
Yeah, we can't have any of that. That will definitely not be good. Do we have any concern? You brought up Jim Ross a couple of times. Do we have any concerns with Jim Ross, Excalibur, and Alex Marvez, who's never announced before? He's a writer. He's a reporter. Jim Ross, his work with New Japan and his work with some of the stuff in WWE hasn't really worked great. So, any concern here with this announced team that they're throwing at us, Drew?
I wish they would have gotten a better, more established kind of play-by-play guy. I won't lie, you guys, I was really hoping for Ian Riccaboni for this job.
Ooh,
I think Riccaboni
that'd been great.
Is one of the best in the biz right now because you weren't getting Mauro Ranallo. You weren't getting Mauro. It wasn't happening. And in my opinion, Mauro is the top of the pops at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But Ian Riccaboni is not a distant second, and I think Riccaboni would have been a great hire for them. And I think he could have been had if they would have made the right offer. I like your point, Strohs, about Jim Ross, about how we all have this romanticized idea of Jim Ross in our heads. But recently, Jim Ross's idea of what makes good wrestling is what a lot of people think makes boring wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know a lot of the old school people listening to this are going, "You shut your mouth, you rapscallion, your damn gimmicks and your flippy shit." But I love my flippies. And I do. And Jim Ross hates that type of wrestling. He does. And he's been public about it. And he's a guy who you could run into a little bit of pushback if he doesn't like your creative position. He could push back on the broadcast. And I'll be honest, I was not ever overly impressed with the things he did with New Japan.
Yeah.
And it was a bummer because I love the memory of Jim Ross. And I like the idea of this announce team. But I think you're really missing essentially your Mauro Ranallo, your Ian Riccaboni, your Tom Phillips, for God's sake.
I think with Jim Ross, you could see, I don't want to say he was losing it, but I think he's kind of lost some of his shine with the stuff with New Japan. He didn't know who half the guys were, didn't know what their moves were. He was getting guys confused in the ring. It was very sloppy, and that stuff was all taped. He basically went in a room and did the commentary for it because it had already aired. So that was really concerning for me. And you're right, he is a name, but I don't know if he's got what it's going to take to really get everything over. And with his disposition on, like you said, the flippy shit, the high spots, that's what makes a lot of this wrestling exciting nowadays. And he likes a little bit more ground and pound, a little bit more old school. So is that going to cause a problem? And you got to remember, too, the announcer's just as important as the competitor when they're in the ring. He's got to get you over. He's got to sell you to the fan base watching at home. If he doesn't like your stuff, is he going to sell you as hard? You have to ask those questions, and I'm not sure that he will. John, you love Jim Ross. You love Jim Ross. You have these memories of him when he was calling his DX stuff. You have all these memories of him with everything with WWE. Are you concerned at all that Jim Ross is going to kind of fall flat with this, I guess, with this new breed of wrestling?
See, I don't think so. And for those that had issues with him in New Japan, and I know that was talked about, you got to remember, too, that it's different when you're sitting, at a table and you're watching a screen and you're doing technically a voiceover. Mm-hmm. Okay, he's going to be there live, and he's always going to be associated with some of the bigger calls. Now, yeah, he is an older vet. Now, he is somebody that probably his most important role will be kind of giving insight into what could work, storylines, and things like that. Commentating, I think that you do have an opportunity for Jim Ross to, bring some excitement. I think it's going to be a new challenge. Remember that he hasn't been booked as much at WWE, so he's going to be going in there with fire and brimstone to kind of show the old company, hey, I still got something left. And look, in the end, I know people do care a lot about the commentators, but hey, if the wrestlers put on great matches and there's compelling things to call, I do think that Jim Ross will live up to the expectations, and he'll do a good job. And of course, he's just there now, maybe potentially to show the younger cats the ropes. And just like the talent, you got to always find the next announcer that can take this to the next level. And Drew, I do want to ask you this in terms of the pay-per-view. Do you think that in terms of the pay-per-view, how much of a home run do they have to hit because of the expectation? Obviously, it's going to be a card that has a lot of talent on it and a lot of top talent in terms of the likes of Kenny Omega, Chris Jericho. Is there anything that you think could happen that could derail AEW, that could be the biggest mistake that they make early on in a show of this caliber and how important it is?
The biggest mistake I think they can make, and I think that's a great question, is to have any dirty finishes. So the biggest complaint that I hear from WWE fans is, why didn't that match get an ending? Why doesn't that have a clean ending? I mean, how many times were we in the middle of just an absolute banger from the Usos and the New Day, and it got ruined by the Bludgeon Brothers of all people? Like, no, I don't care if you're like, ha, 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 it made the fans angry. Yes, it made us angry because you ruined good wrestling with a bad story. And I think you're going to have some type of friction, some type of interference. You're going to have something to drive storylines forward from this first pay-per-view to keep interest going. But you also can't have it dirty finish matches if you're not going to follow through on it. For example, I'm just waiting for MJF to turn on Cody Rhodes. This whole best friend father figure thing can't last. Not in character for MJF. So if he messes with the Cody Dusty match, Dustin, I apologize, I'm here for it. I'm here for that if it makes sense storyline. Mm-hmm. But if you've just got matches ending in DQs, if you've just got matches ending, because, someone – and here's the other thing, guys. You have to keep your big players healthy out of this. Cody Rhodes is fresh off of how long of an injury timeout? And if he gets injured again in this first pay-per-view, you've got a problem. Kenny Omega gets injured in this first pay-per-view, you've got a problem. Now, Kenny Omega happens to be working with one of the safest workers of all time in Chris Jericho, so I'm not too worried about an Omega injury. But what if the Young Bucks attempt something a little too crazy with the Lucha Bros? You can't lose one of these big guys, and I think that's the biggest issue facing AEW going forward is depth of roster. Because once you get through that top-tier talent, guys, there's not a whole ton with a lot of sex appeal to it. Now, again, we're wrestling fans. I would love to see some of these guys that they've got on the roster get a bigger shine. But in the same breath, no one's tuning in at first to see the Best Friends or to see Angelico. No one's tuning in at first to see that. You can build them, but you've got to do it with these major players you've already got. Gentlemen, I've got to run. I've got a doctor's appointment. Best of luck with the rest of the cast.
Awesome. Thanks, Drew. Really appreciate your time. Good luck with the doctor's appointment. Keep up all the good work.
All right, boys. See you soon.
I think Drew brings up a great point with the depth of the roster, and I was going to go there, but he beat me to the point. The depth of the roster is interesting, and like he said, after the top-tier talent, after your Kenny Omegas, your Chris Jerichos, your Young Bucks, I'll even throw Pentagon Jr. and Phoenix in there, as well as Cody, and I don't know if you want to put Dustin in there, but after that, there is kind of a drop-off. I mean, your next tier are going to be guys like Christopher Daniels, Frankie Kazarian, Scorpio Sky. That's your next tier. What do you have after that? It's a lot of guys who most wrestling fans don't necessarily know.
But also remember, what's been the strategy that we're seeing so far to promote? They're doing a lot of videos. They're doing a lot of YouTube stuff, a lot of stuff on Instagram, a lot of stuff on Twitter. I do think
the Young Bucks are great at marketing.
Yes.
They're phenomenal at marketing.
And
so
remember,
they can build people.
Yes, I do think that you can potentially tell stories without having TV, without having actually the company. Look, what is fueling the Cody versus Dustin Rhodes match? I know it all online. Mm-hmm. They've done vignettes. So I do think that Drew did express concerns regarding, having 50 men. But you can tell stories within that. Jim Ross can tell, like, hey, this is the accomplishments of this guy. This guy will be, hey, Ty Dillinger, whatever his character name is going to be in AEW. Hey, this guy has, the ability to do some great things. So you can start to plant the seeds of the next stars that you're going to highlight within a match. And I do think wrestling fans, right now, really are looking for something different. And the idea is quality wrestling. The idea is, creating moments, creating this holy shit moment that everybody from the first pay-per-view experienced with, some great spots and some really talented wrestling. And I do think that AEW will deliver on that. And yeah, creating stars is super tough, but I do think when you have the likes of Chris Jericho, Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes, and then the addition of Dustin Rhodes, you don't think they can look across that 50-man battle royal and start to go, okay, let's try this. Because remember, what are they selling us? That, hey, we're going to give everybody an opportunity. We're not going to micromanage. So they're going to be able to kind of already, if you think about it, even if they just spent 2 days a week on talent, in terms of preparation for this, you don't think that they've started to pinpoint of the 50 people, this is kind of where we're going to go? Remember, there is some level of planning in professional wrestling. Now, is it to the level of micromanagement that goes on at the big company? Probably not. But at the same time, they do have a vision, I think, of where this is going to go on TV. You don't think at this point in time the first couple shows are somewhat formulated as to what they kind of want to see in terms of what's going on, and then you just plug and play the rest of it?
Well, I think so.
Especially if it's only an hour-long show.
There has to be long booking in mind when you're putting all this together. So I do believe that they do have that. That's the goal. That's the concern, and that's the key, is to have these matches and have this stuff be able to drive you someplace, right? That's the one thing I think that everybody gets bogged down with WWE. You're kind of in a car and you're like, hey, cool, we're going someplace, and you can see it up in the distance, and then all of a sudden WWE does something where next thing you know, you just hung a hard left and you don't know where the hell you're going and why you got here. Okay,
now the biggest question, and it's being debated heavily because of this video that was put out by Jon Moxley. Everybody is wondering, okay, there should be, and if AEW wants to make a splash, there should be a surprise. If it's CM Punk, I think that would blow the roof off of the place.
CM Punk would be crazy.
That would be something that would be headline-worthy. I don't know how much juice he has left in terms of what he can do in the ring, but the arrival would probably be on par with Chris Jericho arriving in WWE. Mm-hmm. I think that CM Punk, if you can land him, you now have a guy that you can build around as well. But another top star potentially could be Jon Moxley, a.k.a. Dean Ambrose. But many people that go online are going, look, when you put the pieces together and you start reading and digging into it, there's been some reports that WWE actually helped out in terms of this production of this video. And remember that this video just didn't show up one day. It had to be produced. It had to be shot. Mm-hmm. And why would WWE, in terms of using a talent that's under contract, let him go and shoot a video of that quality for another promotion? So there are equal signs and equal arguments to be made that Jon Moxley might just come back at a later time in WWE after he clears his head, after he, really mentally flushes out whatever's bothering him. There's a strong argument that Jon Moxley is not going to be part of AEW.
That was the initial report too. He's going to take 6 months off and kind of clear his head and then come back. But what about this? The one reason why Dean Ambrose left WWE was creative differences. He didn't like what they were doing with his character. He wanted to do something different with his character. What if the Jon Moxley video that you've seen was something that he shot with WWE? He put this all together with WWE, and a lot of the footage that you have in it is from whatever they shot, because it was supposed to be a character revamp when he was coming back from his tricep injury. WWE said, no, we got to get Roman Reigns over still. We're doing stuff with Seth. We're going to throw you back in
with Dean Ambrose, and
right.
And
we're going to throw you back into the Shield, and we're going to do it this way. And at that point, Dean was like, you know what? I'm good then. I don't want this contract. I'm good. Because if you look at the way the timeline sets up, this could have possibly been the whole thing.
But then why would you let him release the video? Say, okay, it's our video.
Well, here's the thing. He ends up getting the copyright production for it because he's in it, whatever. However it works. You don't know what the deal, you don't know what the setup is. He could have just used theirs. He maybe might have been putting this whole thing together as a side thing just to kind of show this is what I want to do. Because remember, guys have to go to Vince and they have to sell their idea to Vince before Vince okays it. So maybe he was doing that. Maybe he was using WWE production equipment to do that, but he was the one who was putting the video together. Next thing you know, he says, I'm good, goes off to AEW, and AEW's like, bet, we can do some stuff with all of that. And that's where you put in the brick wall with the dice rolling that has what is it going to be May 25th that this is going to take place? So it's got a 2 and the 5. You've got all these little symbolisms that you slip into this video to kind of chop it up, and he makes it his own. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I see what you're saying, and I get it. At the same point, he seemed really fed up with WWE, and I don't know if you've noticed. Have you noticed Renee's commentary lately on WWE? It's not been good.
It's not been good.
It's not been good. She was a highlight for that commentary team, and it's been bad. I just like, man, shut up. Just stop. Like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if she's got people in her ear. I'm not sure what is going on. It just does not sound like her. He could be going to AEW. She could be behind him.
How big a pop will you experience if he shows up there?
Oh, blow my... lose it. Basically taking pants off and running around in baby oil. It'll be awesome.
Okay.
Are you going to pay the $50 to watch this? Now, there's a couple different ways you can watch this, and I want to get this out there so everybody who knows, like, how do I get to see this? How do I, I was talking to a buddy of ours, and he was like, I'm not even sure how I watch this.
First and foremost, it's Saturday night.
It is Saturday night, and you can watch it. You can watch the first hour at 7 p.m., 7 p.m. to 8 on YouTube or Bleacher Report Live, okay? That's called the buy-in. That's where you're going to have your Battle Royal, and you're going to have another match. After that, you will have to pay $49.95 to either
$49.99 or $95. You said
$95. I'm looking at it right now. You'd have to pay $49.95 to either Bleacher Report for their live stream or Fit TV, or you can get it off your major cable provider's pay-per-view option. So you can purchase it if you'd like. So there's a couple different ways you can watch this. Are you going to pay the $49.95? It's a lot of money for a one-off show. That's my problem with it. WWE has soiled and sullied everybody.
Yeah, $10
because you
for
pay
a pay-per-view.
$10 for an entire month of just videos and catalogs of different audio and visual, whereas this is a one-time deal and you're paying $50.
See, I'll be honest. I will search for the ways to stream it in ways that I have in the past without compensating. I will do that. I will try. But if it doesn't work out, I'm going to search to see if it's available via outlets that I'm aware of. But $50, I think, is a little too high. I think the price that I think, obviously, I would say I would have no problem is like $35.95. $35 to $40. If it's like $39.99, I'm okay with it. $50 is just a little bit too high, especially with the fact that you exactly don't know what's exactly going to happen and things like that. So it's at a price where I'm still willing to look to see if I can find it for free.
Right.
And that's just the way it is. $50 in my pocket's better than $50 putting it out there.
No, for
That's
sure.
just the way it is, especially with the ability. But I wonder how many people will actually try and hack into it and see. But is $50 the right price point?
$50 seems steep. If there was more that I was getting with this, if I was, I don't know, somehow guaranteed. They have another pay-per-view coming up in I think in June. If I was somehow guaranteed if I'm going to pay the $50, I'll get this one and I'll get the one in June, cool, all day long. But this is a one-off deal. And like you said, there's no guarantee that this is going to be really, really good. I think it will be really good, but there's no guarantee. The whole thing about All In was you had guys from ROH, you had guys from New Japan, you had different guys that you were familiar with. There's a lot of people on this card that you're not real familiar with. Do you know who Sonny Kiss is?
Nope.
Brandon Cutler?
No.
Have you ever seen Brian Pillman Jr.? I know who his dad is.
Yes, I know his
and
dad.
I've seen one match with him.
He has a good social media game, good social media presence. I've seen his stuff retweeted.
Do you need to see Glacier again? You remember him from WCW?
I can't believe he's still wrestling.
Right.
Ace Romero, never heard of him.
I think that's Rocky Romero. He was from ROH. He's actually pretty decent.
Okay.
There are some guys who you just don't know who the hell they are because they're indie guys. And unless you're really into the indie game, and we both are wrestling fans, and we both are into indie wrestling, it just doesn't consume my life.
And see, I think the better option is if you can't stream it, is find that one buddy that you know and trust and invite them over and split the cost.
Yes.
At $25 each, if you can get 3 people, I think the more the merrier. If you can gather people together and that are real hardcore wrestling fans that you want to spend time with, it's better to split the cost 3 ways.
If you hold a watch party, right, charge everybody $5-10 at the door, and you provide a little bit of food, a little bit of grub. If they want beer,
well worth it.
Bring your own beer. You can make it happen, and it's totally worth it because it's gonna be a good show. It's gonna be a good show.
All right, we got 10 minutes left. Let's start looking at some of the main matches and what's going to excite you.
Before we do that, I want to read this. I want to read this statement from Tony Khan. All right, and I want to get your take on it. All right. So owner Tony Khan came out in a press release, and he said, wrestling fans have wanted and needed something different, authentic, and better for far too long. All right. AEW is answering the call. AEW is about more than wrestling. It's about a movement fueled by wrestling fans who have been underserved and perhaps even disappointed by what the industry has produced in recent years. AEW is rising to the occasion with Double or Nothing, and today taking steps further by partnering with Warner Media, which is TNT. which is committed as we are making wrestling fans the one and only priority. With Warner Media, AEW is poised globally to redefine wrestling as we know it today. AEW has also been on record of saying less scripted, soapy drama, and more athleticism in real sports analytics. They have been on record, like Drew had mentioned earlier, wins and losses have to count. Wins and losses are going to count. This is a complete shot at WWE. It's a complete shot at what we've been spoon-fed for years now. I think this right here, this is a guy coming out on his ship and pulling back a bow and arrow, and at the tip of the arrow is fire, and he is shooting this over into the Navy Yard that is WWE. He knows he's the one ship. He's the one guy, and he says, you know what? I'm taking you on, and I know you got more firepower than me, but let's go to war. I love this.
Yeah, I think the one word that they can use over and over and over again for the first 3 or 4 months, I think the one word that they can use over and over again for the first 3 months is different. We are not that.
Yes.
And I think right now, we've been recording for the better part of an hour and a half, other shows and this show. We've been watching the WWE Network, and you and I have been looking and just kind of marveling at what Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon, Mr. Perfect were able to do in the ring. Okay, what's missing? There's no commercials. There's no, hokiness. It's just hardcore wrestling for over 15 minutes. There's no breaks in the action. There's no weird endings. It's just a match.
They tell stories.
The matches are great, and these are old school matches with guys that are older. The Brain Busters, the Orient Express. What's different? Why are WWE fans turned off? Because, and it's just the way it is now. The product right now at the big company is geared for kids. It's geared for people 8 to 19 years old. And those are the fans that, tell their mommy and daddies, hey, buy the T-shirt, hey, buy the belt, hey, take me to the event. And that's the problem, is that I think AEW might have success appealing to those that are ages 18 to 35, but can that be sustainable profitable-wise? Can that be sustained and monetized is the big question. So just to your point, as long as Tony Khan says, hey, we're different, and to your point, those that are looking for different, I think are going to be satisfied by what AEW offers. The market is prime for it. The wrestlers are there. There are names that people know about, and I just think that right now it's the perfect time to do it. So all in all, Tony Khan's comments are great. And like I said, I think that by saying the word different, we're going to be different. We're going to provide matches. They're going to do the things that we want. I don't think they're going to let people down, especially early on. Now, I think to Drew's point, could you imagine if there are like technical glitches, if early on the stream doesn't work? That's the biggest nightmare, is that if it doesn't show properly, if people aren't getting their money, real quick.
Do you remember
the Fire Festival? If you don't get what you're buying in, people online quick will come down, because remember,
somebody sucking dick for water? Is that what's going on?
No, what's going to happen is there's a silent majority of fans that love the WWE.
Yeah.
And I saw on YouTube some people crapping on the match, Pac versus Hangman. They're going, why is this not on the pay-per-view? Oh, AEW's not all glorious. There are this silent right now, waiting in the weeds fan base of the WWE. They got a lot of fans. Remember, because WWE might not, just losing ratings.
Dude, they've been around forever. So
$900 million a year in profits.
I mean, you say
profits.
You say WWE to my dad, he's like, oh yeah, I know what that is, right?
Yeah.
You say AEW to my dad, he's like, what are we talking about? Is that like some type of oil for your car?
Exactly.
What are we talking about?
They got to build more brand awareness,
right? I mean, and it'll come. This is technically their first show. It's really their second, but technically it's their first.
Yep. What's the match you got to see? What's the match that if you do get it legally, illegally, how are you going to watch this program? What are you looking for?
Getting this stuff so illegal, you don't even know.
That's right. We'll be texting each other definitely Saturday night, 7 o'clock. All right, what are we trying? keep that phone by you, brother. What are we trying?
So this card has changed a little bit. Because,
you got the link I sent you, right? You got the text link. Okay.
Yes, which is nice.
Nice. Solid.
I also like the WWE porn. That was nice.
That was
nice.
What a great site. We should advertise that next week. Stay with us next week. We'll tell you what Twitter site was that caught my attention. Was like, oh, great! What a great idea.
So, do you want my high profile match that I want to see, and then do you want my one that's going to be sneaky?
Yeah, both.
Okay. So, high profile again. I want to see Kenny Omega versus Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho, one of my all time favorite wrestlers ever. All right. I'm also interested in the Young Bucks versus Pentagon Jr. and Phoenix match. Pentagon Jr. and Phoenix. If you haven't watched them, amazing. They are amazing. Young Bucks are awesome too. So those are the two high-profile matches I want to see. Now, The one that is sneaky, and I'm going to tell you it's going to be good. It's going to be a very, very good match. Trust me, boys and girls. Trust me. It's going to be a very good match. You want to see this. Angelico and Jack Evans versus the Best Friends. The Best Friends were a coup signing for AEW. A coup signing. These guys had WWE hot after them, and they rebuffed WWE to go to AEW. These guys are going to be good. I'm telling you, it's going to be a very good match. Angelico is a solid wrestler. Jack Evans is good as well. This is going to be a very, very good match. Those are the three matches I'm really invested in.
I think, hands down, Omega Jericho will steal the show. Hands down. Because Chris Jericho has something to prove. I think that he has a natural chemistry with Kenny Omega because they have different styles. Mm-hmm. Omega has to prove himself. Even though they fought in Japan, Kenny Omega is not as well known in the States to a lot of the novice fans as he would like. And I think Kenny Omega can take his star to the next level. I do believe in that match, Omega has to go over. You have to have Kenny Omega go over on Jericho, but continue to maintain the level of hype for Chris Jericho because of the fact that, look, Chris Jericho is 49 years old. Omega's the next star. So Omega has to win this match, but Chris Jericho has to deliver a solid performance like he has in previous months, and I know he will.
See, I don't know if Chris Jericho has to lose to Kenny Omega. I don't know if Kenny Omega has to go over. I get what you're saying. This whole thing is built around Kenny Omega, right? He's one of the foundational chips of AEW, but I don't know if he necessarily has to win. Some of Kenny Omega's best matches have been when he's lost. You go back to that Okada series. Some of his best matches has been when he's lost to Okada. And Kenny Omega's already beat Chris Jericho once. Why not have Jericho win? You can then spin this off to a best of three, right? And you get you get Omega going over in the third one. Why not do it that way? A little bit of long-term booking. You have stuff set up now for two of your premier talents, right? After that, Chris Jericho can go feud with whomever he wants, whomever he chooses, and Kenny Omega can then get launched off to whatever his next big project's going to be or whoever his next competition is going to be. You know, that's the thing. What is the long-term picture here? That's the one thing I think New Japan does so incredibly well that WWE is so short-sighted on. New Japan books everything out a year in advance. So they know right now what they're doing and where they've got to go. And they know how they're going to get there. And by any means necessary, they will get there to tell the right story. WWE, you've heard stories of Vince McMahon coming in on a Monday, being like, I don't like Raw, and rewriting the show as the show is going on, giving talent the lines that they have to say. They have to. They're not allowed to go out there and freewheel and say whatever it is that they want or speak from the heart or talk however the character would talk. No. They have to read these scripted lines, and they sound robotic. And they sound like they're trying to think through the script all the time because they're like, wait, what was I supposed to say? Damn it, I forgot. You know, it happens all the time. That is the one thing that New Japan does so very well that WWE has missed out on. And I think AEW needs to learn from New Japan in booking things out long term. Doesn't necessarily have to be a year, but you need to know where you're at right now and where you want to be 6 months from now. And you got to figure out a way to get there.
Oh, man, great podcast. That was fun. Fun to get away from WWE for a little bit.
Oh, it's so great.
The shows weren't that great on Raw and SmackDown anyway. I mean, nothing really comes to mind to even talk about. You know, it was good to take a week off.
It was good to take a week off. I think the one thing coming out of SmackDown this week was Dolph Ziggler reappearing. Mm-hmm. And after that, I mean, you seen that crappy belt that Mick Foley introduced. I still don't get it, but cool, whatever. I don't even understand the wild card, so whatever. Way to go, WWE.
Real quick, I'll say this. Money in the Bank was awesome, but the ending crapped all over the great pay-per-view. Brock Lesnar.
How does...
Why?
Dude.
Let's stop with that.
He wasn't even in the match. How does he win? Somebody explain?
It's a great way to introduce why you're going to have him at Super Showdown.
Thanks, Vince.
It just didn't want it. And I think it was a big turnoff this week. I'm glad we didn't talk about it.
That men's Money in the Bank match was insane.
If you only have one match to watch that.
Yeah.
The finale of Money in the Bank was sick.
Fantastic. And then you take a fantastic match, a match that was going to get, out of a scale of 1 to 10, it was going to get a 12 and a half.
15 stars, yeah.
Yeah. You then dick it up by bringing Brock Lesnar in, and it takes it down to an automatic 5.
Exactly. It was
like way to screw the pooch.
And I think that's why everyone's so excited is that more of the same in WWE. This is new. So let's check it out.
Absolutely.
Let's see what happens. We'll recap it next week. And I do think I like the way we did this. We just have topics, and we'll discuss topics in AEW, topics in WWE, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think our show is going to evolve a little bit here going forward. Just because we do now have to cover AEW. They have to be talked about.
Yeah.
So if you guys see our show changing a little bit, that's what it's going to be. I don't think we're going to do the reviews as much anymore. It's going to be more...
Or as lengthy.
Yeah.
Topical driven. Topic driven.
It's going to be
what we
more
liked, what we didn't like. Yeah.
broad in
topic
what we
driven.
discuss.
Yeah, topic driven, what we liked, what we didn't like, who's getting the right push, things that we saw that we were interested in, and things like that. And especially adding AEW, I think, will freshen up everything. And you have to add it.
Too.
Yeah,
you have to.
And something else, too, is that being now that live programming on WWE is not good, I think next week what I'll also bring to the table is I'll review a collection that maybe I watch over the weekend, because how do you not... Look, we literally watched...
Oh, this is the Shawn Michaels Bret Hart steel cage match.
Yeah, we watched...
it's that old blue steel cage, too.
Yeah, we watched in the last hour and a half, we watched Shawn Michaels versus Marty Jannetty in their old feud. We watched Survivor Series 92, I believe, Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart. So I'll review some collections and what you definitely should check out on the network if you're a subscriber.
Absolutely.
Because live programming just isn't where it's at with WWE. The value is in the network.
Yeah, it really is. And that's why I think the $49.95 is a steep price point.
Yeah.
It's a little bit high, especially because WWE has really... You get this for $10.
Yeah.
I mean, you get to watch all of this. This is awesome. This is great.
Yeah, we're
you
gonna
get
do
to
that.
watch this for $10.
And Doc currently is watching the Shawn Michaels collection. Not Mr. WrestleMania, the Shawn Michaels Wrestling Collection on WWE Network. It's awesome. Let me tell you that. All right, for the Jock, Adam Straczynski, I am the Doc, John McAroon. Thank you for spending the last hour with us talking AEW. We hope the show delivers. Please, CM Punk, Jon Moxley, give us something. Make wrestling great again. This Saturday, Memorial Day weekend, let's make it happen.
Make wrestling great again, huh?
Make wrestling great again. See everybody next week. Thank you.